computer. Perfect. Well, welcome back, everyone, for another Giving Circle Spotlight series. I am your host, Taisha Ty Wilson, and I'm the Director of Engagement here at Philanthropy Together. And I am super duper happy to be here with the leaders of the Jewish Pride Fund based out of San Francisco. And so I have so many questions, and they're amazing. Giving Circle is doing such great things, not just in San Francisco, but nationally and internationally. So we're going to get into it. Danielle, Daniel, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. Why don't you all let's jump into it. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell everyone what's your role within the circle, and just give us some background and just a general overview of the circle itself.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Danny Wine. I am the volunteer chair of the San Francisco Jewish Pride Fund.
I'm Danielle Mashor, and I'm the Director of Collaborative Philanthropy for the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund, which is the organization that helped to launch the Jewish Pride Fund and facilitates it.
Yeah, and the San Francisco Jewish Pride Fund, we are a giving circle of philanthropists based here in the Bay Area. And what we really focus on is supporting the intersecting needs, values, and interests of the LGBTQ communities and Jewish communities, like you said, in the Bay Area here in San Francisco, nationally, and also in Israel. And we are entering our 6th grant-making cycle. This is my 2nd year as chair, and Danielle has been helping to lead the Jewish Pride Fund since we started 6 years ago now.
Awesome. And okay, so should I call you Danny or Daniel? Just want to make sure.
How did I introduce myself? I go back and forth. Let's go Danny.
Danny. Okay, Danny. All right. So, you just said something about just like the organizations that y'all support. You're not just in San Francisco. That is super duper unique, because most giving circles are super high, they're like very hyper local. They support organizations in their backyard. So can you share a little bit more about y'all model? Like what's the story behind why y'all support locally, nationally, and internationally, and what that impact has looked like for you all?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the origins of the Jewish Pride Fund are actually quite interesting. The Jewish Federations of North America, which is the national umbrella for federations across the country, they hosted their first ever LGBTQ leadership delegation to Israel. I believe it was in 2017, right around then. Yeah. And you had many dozens of leaders from across the country, federations in Chicago and Cincinnati and New York and San Francisco. And there was a really solid cohort from San Francisco, and several of the members from that trip, among them Sam Goldman, David Rack, Kyle Levine, and others, went on this trip to Israel, explored the LGBTQ community in Israel, and came back to San Francisco wanting to bottle up the excitement and purpose that had really come to the forefront on that trip, but realized that there was a lack of a philanthropic-based community around those intersecting identities, Jewish identities and LGBTQ identities. So they decided to create a dedicated fund devoted to reinvesting back into programs and initiatives that serve those intersecting identities. And the reason that we don't just serve organizations in San Francisco is there are some extraordinary organizations in Israel. I think that a lot of queer Jews, whether or not they have been to Israel, have a soft spot for the country. It is a country that has among the most vibrant LGBTQ communities in the world. And many of those organizations are underfunded. So I think that when you look at what the Pride Fund has really looked to do, and Danielle is, really the lead who has helped to develop our relationships with the organizations themselves, we really work to identify underfunded initiatives, organizations under the radar that might not be getting all of the resources they need to succeed. And there are a lot of those initiatives in Israel. You have queer youth shelters that not only serve, uh, uh, you know, members of the Jewish community in Israel, but they serve members of the Arab community, members of the Druze community. You have open houses. You have the Jerusalem Open House, which specifically helps to put on the Jerusalem Pride Parade in one of the most sensitive cities in the world. And I think that as an extension of the work that we do here in the Bay Area, and obviously we have our lives here in the Bay Area, thinking about where our dollars can really stretch the furthest, supporting organizations in Israel is something that we're quite passionate about.
I think it's I definitely think it's something for Giving Circles to consider. I mean, when I did not know that about Israel, Danny. So thank you for sharing that. And you all really have been able to not just to fund some organizations, locally, nationally, and internationally, but it sounds like y'all have good relationships with the organizations that you have. And I'm wondering, you all launched in what, 2017 or 2018?
We launched in 2018 and we made our first grants. And we launched in 2017. We made our first grants in 2018.
Gotcha. And y'all from the start have always had that local, national, international supporting of organizations. Okay.
Yeah. The way that we start our circles is that the members who get together actually do a process where they think about their philanthropic values and they work together to write the mission and vision of the fund. And then they set their granting parameters. So the founding group, which we started with 10 members, and now we've grown it to 29, which Danny has certainly helped to do that, as you noted, Taisha, in the last few years, to really accelerate our growth. But they help to establish our geographic areas that we focus on.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to note in regards to how and why we're able to work with Israeli organizations, and I think there is something to learn about this for giving circles that might be getting off the ground in other cities that have an interest in kind of branching out of their own local communities. One of the privileges we have in working and partnering with the Jewish Federation here in the Bay Area is that they have permanent staff in Israel. One of the things that you get when you partner with larger institutional philanthropies and organizations is that they have their own relationships. Now, we make our own decisions on where to grant that are then, recommendations that are dispersed by the Jewish Federation. And one of the things that we get out of that partnership is that we get to learn from and build relationships with the staff that the Federation has in Israel. And we actually just had a trip for some of our members to Israel this past summer, where we actually got to meet on the ground with some of the organizations that we've granted to, and even meet with new organizations that we're considering granting to. And, those meetings would have been more difficult to set up if we wouldn't have had a local partner on the ground.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, okay. So you all, so let's talk about the money, all of the good resources you all are shifting. So Zanny, you have been credited for increasing that membership. And we know that the increase, as your members increase, then the pot increases, right? Mm-hmm. And so last year, I think I read that you all gave out $56,000 in grants. You exceeded the prior year goal by like over 20K, which is amazing. Oh, please share. Congratulations to the fund itself and all of your hard work for growing your membership and increasing the pot. But please tell us, what's the drivers behind your strategy with increasing your membership base, Danny? And then also, did y'all have any other support that helped y'all to increase the pot that was beyond your member contributions?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I started with my friends, I started with my network, and then reached out from there. And I think that when you are looking at growing a giving circle, looking at your own network is great, because hopefully you surround yourself with people who share your values. And when I raised my hand to take over as being chair of our giving circle from David Rack, our previous chair, I had several months to think about who are new individuals that I want to be drawing into the San Francisco Jewish Pride Fund's work. And I was unapologetic. If I was at a party on a Saturday night and I was having a conversation with someone and they mentioned that they had just moved here from New York and they're Jewish, and maybe they even mentioned that, they're still making friends, they had this community in New York or wherever they came from, I would write their name down in a notes app on my phone. And a couple of days later, I would send them a link to our work and offer up the opportunity to meet over coffee and share a little bit more about the work. And sometimes they would be interested and sometimes they wouldn't be, but I think people really want an outstretched arm because philanthropy can be very intimidating. I think a lot of people think that philanthropy is for incredibly rich people. And I'll be transparent that the buy-in for the Jewish Pride Fund is not nothing. We have a buy-in of $1,800, which is a lot of money for most people.
Yeah.
And when I first joined the Pride Fund when I was 26, it was a lot of money for me based on what my salary was at that point. But making the decision to write an $1,800 check, it has meant that when I have leaned into philanthropy in other ways over the past 5 years, it's been less intimidating because I've had a foundation of knowledge and a community of people who have prioritized philanthropy, and it makes for wonderful friendships. And it also is a wonderful entry point for individuals who are interested in learning more about philanthropy, but they want a community of people to engage in it with. So giving circles are an incredibly exciting community, whether you are in your early to mid 20s, just getting started with your career, or if you're a veteran philanthropist who's in their 50s or 60s or 70s, wanting to give back in a more targeted way, or even mentor younger people to help them better understand what it looks like to get involved.
Thank you for even what you're talking about with philanthropy is something that we want the world to know, like what a philanthropist is. And it's what you just said, Danny, in terms of we often think of a philanthropist as this super ultra rich person and that's it. And it's like, yeah, no. When we think about philanthropists, it's the intentional and way of how we give our time, our talent, our treasure, our testimony, our ties, and connect people together that really allows us to own that narrative of of being a philanthropist. And so that does not always just include people with just with wealth. That includes youth and people, just more diverse communities that traditionally don't see themselves as philanthropists. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm wondering, with your grantees and with your members, like, are you all seeing your members engage in beyond the dollar ways out in the community, Danny, Danielle? Like, because I know, like, for my giving circle, when my giving circle changed my trajectory. Like once I, got into community and was with my sisters, within my circle, we now I serve on boards. I offer pro bono support to some of our grantee partners. It's like other extension ways that's beyond the dollar that we're really leveraging and supporting our grantees. Are you all doing similar work beyond the dollar work with your grantee partners?
I'll start by saying I actually ended up co-founding a civic tech nonprofit since becoming a member of the Jewish Pride Fund. So I actually in my private life, in my extracurricular, as a volunteer chair of the Jewish Pride Fund, I donate my own money and work with our members to disperse our funds. And then in my day job, I also run a nonprofit, and I'm actually in the position of applying for grants. I think that one of the things that we hope our members get from being involved in giving circles in general, but particularly ours, is to be empowered to join boards and to get involved in other ways that go well beyond this. One of the things that we really encourage people to do, because we have a consensus-driven grant-making approach that Danielle can speak to. But we might get to the end of our giving cycle, and not every organization that a member perhaps wanted to fund got written a check at the end of our grant making cycle. And we really encourage people at the end, if there was an organization you were really excited about because you discovered them through our meetings, please go out, volunteer with them, see about joining their board, see about writing a check directly to them. And I think a lot of our members have really leaned into that.
Yeah. To build on that, some members do get really interested in the organizations. And because I'm usually the first person to reach out to the organizations to learn about them and to invite them to apply and have them submit an application, I often build that relationship. And so if a fund member is very interested in an organization, I can put them together. So for example, we had a fund member who was going to be in Israel last summer. The fund member couldn't join the trip that we had organized, but still wanted to meet with organizations. So we were able to organize that. He met with 2 of the organizations and felt like he, could come back and really speak about how great they were. He was really on the same page. So we're able to facilitate, a lot of relationship building. And in my work as director of collaborative philanthropy, even with other circles that I run, I'm able to facilitate lots of relationship building between donors and organizations that make it feel very intimate. And especially even for the dollars that people are giving, they often can't have those kinds of relationships. Right. If you're just writing a check alone, from your own home, you don't have that same feeling of connection to the people that you're giving with, but also to the organizations and their leadership.
Yeah, and one thing I will just add, because I think it's one of the things that I love the most about being a participant and as a leader within the Jewish Pride Fund, and it's something that having a philanthropic professional like Danielle embedded with the operations of our fund allows for, it's the fact that we're not just reading grant applications. The final round is we actually have 20-minute interviews with a leader from the organization we're considering funding. Now, not every giving circle can do that. And it's also not lost on us that requesting Zoom interviews can be burdensome. But I really do find that leaders of nonprofits that we're interested in funding really love the opportunity to meet with us, to have us ask questions. We record it so that members who aren't able to attend the meeting virtually can go back and review the interviews before they actually vote on grant disbursement. And that kind of connection of being able to engage beyond the proposal is really valuable. And I find that year upon year, there are certain organizations that really just stick with certain people, and the interviews, the opportunity to just for a couple of minutes, have a group representing the giving circle, engaging with those leaders, it really sticks with people, and it probably, hopefully leads to further engagement down the line.
So many best practices in your grant processes.
Yeah, actually, if I could even jump in and say that Danny just reminded me of another one that we've been talking about really for the last 2 years, which is trust-based philanthropy, and starting to really try to integrate those practices into what we're doing and what that might look like in terms of changing our model. Even we just had a meeting this past week talking about, well, for organizations that have applied before, looking at renewals, or like how can we lessen the burden if we decide to invite them to apply again. And similarly, we're entertaining the idea that if we're going to ask an organization to interview because they don't necessarily get funded, even though they interview, to offer them a minimum honorarium for doing that. So they still might not get the full grant, but they could get some sort of dollar amount acknowledging their time and effort. And I really think that that is something that we should start instituting this year, and would be very in line with trust-based philanthropy.
I love that so much. That's definitely something, even with my circle, Daniel, I feel y'all, that's something that we want to do more of, especially when you consider for the smaller organizations that we're supporting, they're already so thin on capacity wise in terms of their their time. And so just the acknowledgement of that, and to offer that up is very impactful. So I love that you all are bringing in trust-based philanthropy in your processes. So Danielle, I have a quick question for you, because you've been here from the beginning. A lot of times it's daunting starting a giving circle. Like, we tell everyone it's fun and exciting, it's impactful, it's going to be great, but it is some work. And so I just, in looking back from when you first started the fund and now with all what y'all have done in these 6 years, like, what advice would you give yourself, knowing what you know now from like the beginning?
Well, Taisha, it's a great question. And I'm not sure that I would change that much.
Okay.
We're giving circle within an institution. So we do have some institutional supports, although you are right that it was in a lot of ways, starting out, it was me and the founding chair, who's a volunteer leader like Danny. And we were really growing this very organically. We were meeting people for drinks or coffee to get new members to join. We had a goal of having at least 10 members before we launched, which we reached that goal. And we, really organically started out with just conversations with the group about what are their values, mission and vision. And I do believe that I could have come in very programmed and I could have come in with 100 organizations already researched. And we really didn't. I came in saying, do you guys know of any organizations that you're interested in? And I could have done all the work, but I didn't want to do that. And I have to say that it has really grown organically. We now have a 40-page document of organizations. In our first year, we were and now we put it, finally I took it off of an Excel spreadsheet. Finally it got to this point of wow, this has really grown and it needs to be very organized. But in our first year, we just came up with a few organizations, and in a lot of ways that was great, because to have so many, if we had started with so many and what's out there, it would have been very overwhelming. So I think we started at the right place, and it's grown in that way. People like Danny, people like all the members who come in really have, not everything is already done for them. There's space for them to innovate, to bring new things in. Every year, there's improvements, options to change, to make new decisions. And that's really what it's about. And I think that when you're doing this, especially within an institution, there is that balance between over programming it and, and letting it, having it be member owned and driven, and striking that balance is important.
Yeah. What I'll add is, having more or less doubled the size of our giving circle to almost 30 people, it has not been lost on me that facilitating a democratic, consensus-driven process becomes harder the more you scale. And to some extent, I think I certainly have not been trying to grow the fund significantly larger than we are now. I think 30 people is a very solid size. But part of the reason I haven't been trying to grow it too much more is, as the volunteer leader, I am still trying to lean into a process that can be consensus driven. And what that means to me is, when we get to the end of our grant making cycle for 2023, which will be end of this spring, early summer, I want everyone to feel like an organization they were incredibly passionate about got a grant. Again, not guaranteed, but that's the hope. That if someone was passionate about a particular angle of our giving, that they had the opportunity to not just express that, but evangelize for it to the rest of the group. And that creates a learning environment where we're all learning from each other, but also understanding where kind of the major pockets of enthusiasm are for a particular organization, for let's say, 2 years ago, just as an example, um, we were making our grant making decision amidst a great deal of violence taking place in Israel, and particularly violence between Jewish and Arab communities. And we made a decision as a cohort, as a giving circle of peers, that we really wanted to make a statement in our grant to support an organization that also works with marginalized Arab queer youth, not just Jews, but explicitly served the Arab community. And we supported an organization called Beit Dror that does that. And we were able to take what was otherwise a really dark situation in Israel, in the country that a lot of our organizations are, and prioritize a giving lens that really elevated one of our values, and supported an organization that really sits at the center of that. And I think that 2 years later, it's one of the things that I was really happy we were able to come together to do as a group. And I think that it's certainly one of the reasons why we have members who this is their 6th year returning, or their 5th year
That's
returning.
right. Yeah, I can totally see that. Like, even like y'all have shared so many best practices in terms of engagement. I mean, your grant processes itself is an engagement strategy. Sound like it's so inclusive in how y'all bring your members along for all of the levels, all of the steps, all the way through. So I'm wondering, I can literally talk to y'all like for another hour, because I have so many other questions, but we'll wrap up, and I do want to give y'all the opportunity to just share what you all have coming up, or anything else that you want folks to know about the fund itself, or where they can find you, or how they can support you. I'll just kind of leave it to you all to close us out.
Do you want to start, Danielle?
Yeah, well, you can find us. There is a link to what we do on our Federation website, which I can share with you, Taisha, at another time. And we do have a presence on Grapevine, although I believe it's private at this time. But definitely you can navigate to the Federation. And in terms of what we have coming up, I'll let Danny talk about that, but I will just give you a teaser here that we, for the first time, have a social chair, which is really exciting. And so with our social chair, we've organized a visit to the GLBT Historical Society, which is a grantee from last year and local to the Bay Area. And Danny could talk a little bit more about what that'll be.
Yeah, and I'll just share that it's been important to me, both as a participant and as a chair, to have our giving circle be beyond meeting to decide where to disperse grants. I think that is wonderful, that's extraordinary, but people join giving circles for a lot of different reasons. And I think the one word that I haven't honed in on enough is community. The Jewish Pride Fund is a community of people with shared values, and to us that means meeting outside of our work meetings. Right. So we have a social chair named Philip Goldberg who is organizing Shabbat dinners and brunches and volunteer opportunities. And you know what? Not everyone makes all of those, and that's okay. The idea is to have enough opportunities that if you are a busy professional who is obviously juggling your participation in a giving circle, in addition to your job, in addition to kids, in addition to your partner, in addition to pets and all of the other things going on in your life, that there are opportunities throughout the year where you can pop over to a Shabbat dinner and bring your partner and introduce them to something meaningful in your life. There could be a brunch, there could be an opportunity to actually meet with one of the local grantees to actually see the impact of a recent grant. And because our membership has grown significantly over the past year and a half, so have the number of social events we're doing. And we have 30 members, and we usually have 10 to 12 members come to any given social event. And my goal is that by the end of each grant making cycle, if each member feels like, one, they were able to live their values in the way that the grants were dispersed, that they feel excited about where the grants are being distributed, and they were able to make and strengthen connections with other members and with the community at large. That's a success.
That's right.
And I see one of my major roles is facilitating, looking at what our members want, empowering them to do much of this themselves, because almost all of us are volunteers. And this is also a leadership development opportunity. You know, it's a leadership development opportunity for me. It's a leadership development opportunity for any members that want to be getting more involved in charting kind of the future of our fund. And I'm looking forward to even more growth, even more, you know, high impact grants for the Jewish Pride Fund, and hopefully giving circles across the country that are able to learn from what we're doing. And if anyone wants to find me on LinkedIn and send me a message and ask questions about best practices, I'm happy to be reachable. And really proud of the work, you know, our members have been doing here in the Bay Area and in Israel.
I'm proud of y'all too. Thank y'all so much for what you're doing, locally, nationally, internationally, just for your hearts and your passion. It oozes all over this Zoom, both of you all. So flowers to you today and every day. I'm big about that. Y'all just keep it up. Keep up the great work that you're doing, and y'all go out and learn more about what they're doing. Connect with them. They dropped so many gems, best practices that even myself, I have to go back to the table and consider for my own circle. So Danny, Danielle, God bless y'all, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
you so much.
Taisha.
You are very welcome.